Okay?
So during my class analysis, a majority of y'all said that you enjoy math. But that's contradicting because in reality, according to the New York Times, only 90% of students say they do not want to pursue a career in math or go into a college math major. The other remaining 10% are people like me. People look at me and they don't really see a nerd, but in reality, that's exactly what I am. Ever since I was little, I've loved math and the way I can manipulate numbers, and I just like to research math theories for fun. So in my search for an interesting math theory, I came across a thing known as the Fibonacci sequence. But before you can see the Fibonacci sequence the way I do and love it the way I do, first you have to understand it. So today I'm going to describe to you what it is, how it can be seen in art, and how it can be seen in nature. This right here is a guy known as Fibonacci. And if you're a mathematician or you enjoy math in any way, you'll know who he is. But in reality, his name is Leonardo Pisano. And he, through the discovery of how bunnies and bees breed, found out a sequence of numbers that is now known as the Fibonacci sequence. 500 years later, a guy living in a completely different part of the world discovered a similar sequence known as the golden ratio that's now used alongside the Fibonacci sequence to create a spiral that I will cover later. And you can see the numbers here, but they're almost similar to the Fibonacci sequence, and what's so interesting about that is they had no idea who each other were, or that they had even done the same thing, but they're so similar. This is the Fibonacci sequence, and I know that whenever you first look at it, it looks really confusing and not fun at all, but today I want to show you all how to do it. So what you do is you take first you start with 0, and then you add it to the number before it. So then next comes 1. It just goes 0, 1, and so 1 plus 0 is 1. Sorry, my handwriting's bad. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. This marker's running out. And then 5 plus 3 is 8. And it just keeps going there, 13, and goes on from there. And it's called the Fibonacci sequence. And it may seem really simple, but in reality, it's so complex that we see it every single day in our lives. And whenever we look at this sequence, we don't just see numbers, we can also turn it into things like spirals. Because you have 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. And you turn it into, this is part of the golden ratio, but they use the same numbers, and it turns into a spiral that we'll see later in the music and in the art, and it's used in our life every single day, and we don't even know it or see it. Some people, like me, look at the numbers, but other people like to look at the more creative aspects of the Fibonacci sequence and use it for their music and for their art. So right now I'm going to cover how it's seen in art. Abby, can you hear this? So what you just heard was a piece of music, Sonata No. 1 in C major by Mozart, and he's using the Fibonacci numbers actually to create his music. And many famous artists, well, musicians, but they're also artists, use this, such as Bach, but Mozart's the most famous, use it in most of his pieces, and they do it by doing, I don't know much about music, but they do it by doing things like this, like one whole note per measure, and they just increasingly get bigger, just like the numbers increasingly get bigger as you go on. But it's interesting how people can do it in music, and they can also do it in actual painting and art. Oh, that's Mozart. See the Mona Lisa? The spiral that I showed you earlier is actually used in her painting. And this is a bunch of different golden ratio spirals, and they're used to create the perfect painting. And back in that era of painting and art, that was seen as the most beautiful, were the ones structured by the golden ratio. And you would see it in architecture, but mostly art. I like how you can see it in art, and I'm sure y'all think it's pretty too. But the most fascinating part of this sequence to me is that not only can we use it and we manipulate it, but we also see it in things that haven't been touched by like human. We just see it in nature. This is a flower and this is a pine cone, and the flower and the pine cone actually follow the Fibonacci sequence in the amount of numbers. They increasingly get larger and they add it each time, just like in this. And whenever you're walking around, you look and you can see, like if you look at a pine cone, you can see how it goes from 5 to 13 to 21. And if you look at it closely, you can discover the numbers in it, and that's what Fibonacci does. And that's what we've discovered too. We can also see it in the spiral of hurricanes and many different things. And on the flowers and on the leaves of trees, it increases by those same numbers.
Wow.
This is another way it's used in nature, is it's used in our body, right? From the shoulder to the head are all Fibonacci numbers. From the fingers to the elbows, and then from the wrist to the elbow, and from your belly button to your knee, and to your knee from your foot, are all split up by Fibonacci numbers. So we can all see the Fibonacci sequence within our skeleton. And also modeling agencies, whenever they look for models, they look for the perfect face. And part of the perfect face uses the Fibonacci numbers. All I could find was just pictures of models, but not with the numbers on it. But what you, like, from the distance of your nose to your eyes and your eyes to your ears, what's considered the most beautiful face is a face, just like we saw in the Mona Lisa, that fits into this Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, go to the next. Oh, that's lost. So today we covered what the Fibonacci sequence is, how it's seen in art, and how it's seen in nature. I hope that the next time you're walking around and you see a pretty flower or you hear your favorite song, you start to think about math and how interesting math actually can be. And although in math class you may sit there and think that this is boring, I challenge you to take it further than that and think about how interesting math actually can be, because it's often seen as just a bunch of numbers and formulas that we have to memorize, but in reality, if we look at it the right way and we study it and we become passionate enough about it, we can help it like explain our lives. Thank you.
Excellent.